I feel privileged to introduce today's speaker for the webinar. She is Claire Ross, as just mentioned by my colleague Michelle. Last month too, she took a webinar on 12th of October on formative assessment, and it was received very well by our audience. Claire has been supporting new and experienced teachers and teacher trainers in the field of English language teaching. Claire has been supporting new and experienced teachers and teacher trainers in the field of English language teaching since 2005. She has worked on projects with institutions and ministries of education in many different countries, creating and delivering webinars, workshops, and courses, observing lessons and mentoring. Claire helps teachers to teach effective and engaging lessons in schools and universities, and develops teacher education skills through coaching and training programs such as the British Council Assured Certificate for Teacher Educators. Claire is also an experienced materials designer who creates online teacher education courses for the British Council and writes primary and secondary classroom material. Welcome, Claire. The topic for today's presentation by Claire is on engaging your students in speaking and listening. How can you help your students to develop fluency and confidence when speaking in English? What makes a good speaking task? In this practical webinar, you'll experience and evaluate a range of engaging speaking and listening tasks that can be used face-to-face or online and with large classes. We hope that by the end of the webinar, you'll have some new, easy to prepare speaking tasks to try out with your students, along with activities to get them really listening to each other. We'll also share links of where to find more activities to add to your repertoire. Over to you, Claire, and good luck.
Thanks so much, Vanita, and a very good evening to everyone. And thank you for rejoining the meeting. All right, so nice to be with you again. Some of you may have been in the webinar I did last month, but today we're talking about engaging speaking and listening activities. So our key questions for today, well, we're thinking about fluency and confidence in speaking. We're going to interrogate what makes a good speaking task, and also how you can get your students really listening to you and listening to each other and developing their listening skills. And I will be demonstrating a few activities today. You don't need to switch on your mic at any time, okay? So please keep yourself muted, but a pencil and paper might be handy. Or if you've got an app on your phone, you can note something down on that. All right, so just warning you in advance. And let's get started. So first of all, let's think about fluency and confidence. We want our learners to feel more confident to speak, don't we? Not only in class, but also outside of class, and for them to be using English more in their everyday lives. If not now, then certainly in the future. So I have a question for you. First of all, get ready, and I'm going to ask you to type your answer either into the comments on Facebook, or if you're with us on Zoom, please type it in the chat. And please keep yourself muted.
Hi everyone, requesting you to please keep yourselves on mute.
Thank you. So here's the question. In order for our students to be able to speak, the environment in our classroom needs to be safe. A safe environment for speaking. What do you think this is? I'd like you to complete the sentence, please. So you don't need to type the beginning, just the end. So a safe speaking environment, you might write, is encouraging, for example. Or there we go, no judgment, friendly, really nice. You've got the idea. So have a look at the ideas of others in the chat. And I'm seeing here there's no criticism. It's child-oriented, lovely ideas. It's friendly is coming up many times. Motivation as well. and also appreciative. I like that. Utsaf has mentioned gender neutral. Thank you for raising that point. Students are not judged on their mistakes, Jason. Thank you. All right. Great ideas here. Thank you. And we'll be coming back to some of those later. Now, as I was researching the topic of today's webinar, I read a piece of research which I will share a link to later. It's one of the Cambridge papers in ELT series, and it's all about creating safe speaking environments. And they decided there were 3 elements of a safe speaking environment that I think many of the things you've mentioned come into. Here they are. Number 1, immersive tasks. So the tasks we set our students are important. They need to have the right level of challenge for our students. So not too easy, not too difficult. They need to support what students can do at the moment and extend them a little. They need to be engaging, of course, that's what we're talking about today, and interesting and fun for the students, so that they really focus on doing and enjoying the task rather than, oh, we're learning English and we're practicing language today. They need to be relevant to our students, to their level, to their interests, to their lives, to the curriculum as well. And it helps too if we give learners some agency, some choice, some sense of control over the tasks that they do in class. So this was the first part. And in the research, they give some examples of immersive tasks. Here they are. So we've got making things. This could be speaking about together in groups and creating a poster, for example, or a play, sharing opinions, problem solving, narrating a story. That could be role play as well, or drama, or discussing issues. So how about you? What kind of tasks from this list do your students enjoy the most? Let us know in the chat or in the comments. What do your students enjoy doing the most? I think games could cover many of these, couldn't it? But are they problem-solving games, or are they games where they discuss something? All right. Lots of people are saying sharing opinions and stories are popular too. Great. And role play. Yeah, so role play could be a story, couldn't it? Or it could be creating something. Great. So that was number 1. I said there were 3, didn't I? 3 aspects of a safe speaking environment. Number 2 now. Positive peer interaction. So what do we mean by this? Well, a quote from the research, this is a conscious effort on the part of the teacher to create a positive classroom culture based on productive classroom norms, such as acceptance and a shared language learning vision. So this is all about creating, as many of you said, a safe and friendly environment, not just that you're being safe and friendly to other students, but they're being friendly to each other. And that includes accepting each other's English, and that they might make mistakes, and mistakes are not to be laughed at, and that certain accents are also not to be laughed at. And we'll be talking a lot more about this in a webinar next month that I'm doing with a colleague on multilingual approaches to teaching. So we'll be talking a lot more about that. But the point here is the classroom is a safe place for learners to speak, where they won't feel judged. Many people said this in the chat. They're listened to and they're accepted. All right, number 3 is about feedback. Now, again, if you came last month to the webinar on formative assessment, we talked about the importance of giving feedback that moves students forward. And of course, this is important in speaking. Just saying well done or good when a student speaks can shut down the conversation, can't it? We need to help students to say more, explain themselves, elaborate a little bit, and also give them some feedback that's going to help them improve. So 2 key points here. A safe speaking environment is an environment where students feel safe to speak, and this is vital for supporting students' language learning. If they don't feel safe, they won't speak, or they won't take risks in their speaking, which means that they won't develop in their speaking confidence or fluency. And the second one, really important, an environment for speaking is valued not simply as time for extra practice. Key point. It's not just practicing what they've learned before, but it's a time of opportunity. And those are the best tasks, aren't they? Where the students are really communicating, and as well as reproducing what they know, there are opportunities and there's a need for new language too. And that's where you can help them to develop. So let's move now to our tasks. So today's session is really focusing on that first point of immersive tasks. So let's interrogate this a little bit and think about what a good speaking task is. I'd like you to think back now. Think about a time when you did a speaking class, a speaking activity that went really well. Just think about it. You don't need to share this if you don't want to. Just think, what was the activity you did? What made it successful? And how would you describe it? Hopefully you've got that activity in mind now. And now I would like you to share. So please click the link that's coming up in the chat. And I'd like you to go to Slido and type in an adjective to describe a good speaking task. So hopefully we have a link coming up in the chat. Okay, is somebody going to share the link, or I can share it? There we go. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. There you go. So let's see. So please go to that link, type in an adjective, and we should be able to see these appearing on Slido. If you're on Facebook, please type it in the comments and you'll be able to see the other ideas appearing as we go. All right, so hopefully some people are in here. We're going to see some things appearing on the screen. Otherwise, I can see some nice examples in the comments here. So we've got positive, personal. We've got different emotions here from Rushi. Expressive, really nice. All right, I think we've got some difficulties with there we go. Thank you. We've got some great, we've got some things appearing now, so don't worry if you can't enter that, just pop it into the chat or into the comments. Realistic, really nice. Informative. Okay, great. All right, so keeping these adjectives in mind, and you can keep looking at this if you like and go back to it later as these appear. I see confident is coming up a lot. So maybe a good speaking task builds confidence, perhaps. Lovely. All right, well done. You made it into the task there. I wonder if any of your adjectives there were the same as the ones that I found in another book about writing ELT materials. So there are 6 adjectives here to describe what the authors think makes a good speaking task. Can you guess these missing words? You've got the first letter or 2 in each case. So this time again in the chat or in the comments, let us know, what do you think makes a good speaking task? What could this first one be? Number 1, it's easy to set up and manage. What is the adjective missing there? It begins with pr. What could that be? So Rishu's there with an idea straight away, and Nishant. We've got different ideas. All right, what could this missing word be? Another idea from Sonali, and I'm gonna start revealing them. Type in any of the ones you think you can guess. Ms. Sadhana, there you go, you've got that one, practical. Okay, what about the next one? I see Farhat has got that one already. It needs to be focused. The task needs to have a purpose. Well done, everyone. Well done, Mohammed Nazir. Number 3, what's this from? It's about anticipating the language that students need. Well, this one is, it needs to be predictable. So you can help students with the language that they need. There you go. Number 4, it mimics real life language use, really important. This one, well done, Purva and Wazila, natural, good. Number 5, how about this? It produces lots of language. That's it, well done. Again, Mohammed Nazir, it's generative. Yeah, that's it. That's what we want, isn't it? A speaking activity that's going to get students speaking. And number 6, well done, Wazila, is versatile, so easy to use again. And just a reminder, please to mute yourselves if your microphone is on. Please mute yourselves so that we can all hear each other. So we're moving now to the stage where I'm going to show you and demonstrate some activities. As I said, you don't need to speak in these activities, but just so that you can understand how they work. They don't require a lot of planning or preparation. The resources you need in most cases is just your students, you, the classroom, a board, and many of them use a textbook as well, or another picture or image. So we're going to go through them one at a time, and after each one there will be a pause where you'll have the opportunity to think about it, reflect and decide if you could use this with your own students. Are you ready? Let's go. So I've grouped these activities, and the first 2 involve dictation. Now you might be thinking dictation is all about writing, isn't it? Well, I think it's about listening and speaking too. So if you've got your pen and pencil with you, now is the time to pick it up. I would like you to listen carefully and write exactly what I say. And when I say the word banana, I'd like you to write your own word. So for example, if I say, my name is Banana, you would write my name is, and then your own name. All right, so write exactly what I say. But when I say banana, write your own word. Ready? Pen and paper at the ready, off you go. So first one, a baby tiger is, please switch off your mic, sorry, we can't do dictation if people are talking. Number 1, a baby tiger is a banana. You need to write the whole sentence. Write every word I say. Remember, when I say banana, write your own word. Number 2, there you go. People in the chat have got the idea. Number 2, a baby pig is a banana. Number 3, a baby sheep is a banana. Great. All right, so now in class, after I've done this, I would check what my students have written. So these are, there you go, these are the sentences with the banana, and then we would check the missing words. So I think you got these: cub, piglet, and lamb. There you go, not a kid, a baby goat is a kid. All right, there we go. So far we're just listening. Students are listening really carefully, and then they're writing down what they hear. Here are the steps of the activity. So first of all, we demonstrate, we've done the demonstration together. The next stage, children would write their own sentence. They'd keep it secret, and they'd replace one of their words with banana. So they, in this class, my students might write another sentence about baby animals. Then in pairs, they would take it in turns to dictate their sentence using the word banana in place of one of the words, and then together they would guess the banana words. So again, here they're speaking together, lots of speaking, listening very carefully, making sure they've understood, and then guessing those words too. So you might use this to check understanding. Maybe after you've looked at this vocabulary in class, you might use it to review, or you might use it to see what students already know before you teach it. And I chose this topic in relation to one of the textbooks. So maybe you're working with this if you're teaching grade 3, and this would be a different way to do this activity, or perhaps to introduce this activity? Or even Priyanka, great idea. Yes, you could use this as an assessment tool. Why not? It's probably the most fun assessment they'll have done. All right, so that's activity 1, banana dictation. Time now for you to think and let us know what you think. So I'm going to ask you 4 questions. For each one, I'd like you to type in the chat or in the comments whether you say yes, you agree, whether it's no, or whether you're not sure. So question number 1, and it helps if you type the number of the question. So question number 1, you might want to type now 1. This is a good speaking task. What do you think? Yes, no, or not sure? Really great. So people are typing number 1 as well. That's really helpful. All right, I can see lots of yeses. Okay. How about number 2? Ready for number 2? Students have to listen carefully. Do you agree in the banana dictation? Good, we've moved on to 2 now. They do have to listen carefully, don't they? They have to listen because they're writing down every word. What about this one? Number 3, can you adapt it? Could you adapt this activity? I've shown you 1 example. So number 3. I make sure you're sending these to everyone, not directly to me. Again, people are saying, yes, absolutely, you can use this with higher and lower levels. Use it to practice the language or vocabulary that your students are studying. And number 4, is anyone going to try it? You don't have to say yes. You can give me a maybe. Oh, we have got some yeses. Wonderful. All right, there you go. So banana dictation is number 1. And if you, as we go, you're thinking, I really like that activity, I just can't quite remember the steps. Don't worry, because at the end, I'm going to share a document with all the steps of the activities that we've done, and also some others as well. Right, the next activity is also dictation. So if you want to take part, take a piece of paper, or you can type in the chat if you like. Actually, this doesn't really work in the chat. It's better on a piece of paper. I'll show you why. So this activity is called Write Your Answers. So you need to take a piece of paper, listen to the instructions, and write your answers in different places on the paper. So I don't want them in the order that you hear them. That's important. So if you're typing in the chat, listen to all the instructions and then put your answers down in a different order. That's my suggestion. And please write 1 or 2 words for each instruction, not a full sentence. So for example, if I say, write an activity that is exciting, you might write watching football or running a race, something like this. But I'd like to see them in a different order. Okay, that was just my example. So here we go, the 3 things to write. Listen. Yeah, a phrase kind of answer, Neeraj, 1 word or 2 or a few words, but not a full sentence. All right, the first one, remember, write it anywhere on the paper, but not in order. Write an activity that is dangerous. Now, somewhere else on your paper, write an activity that you think is really interesting. And the next one, in another place on your piece of paper, write an activity you think is really dull. So we've done the first part of the activity. Now, here are the instructions, and I can see you're getting into it in the chat. The next stage would be for my students to work in pairs and look at the words on their partner's paper. Remember, they're in different places, and guess why they wrote them. They have to guess if they think this is a dull or exciting activity in terms of what their partner thinks. So here are my words. Can you guess what I think? What about knitting? What do you think? Do you think I think that is dangerous or dull or interesting? Can you guess? People are writing dull, interesting. Actually, I think knitting is really interesting. So that was mine. And then this could develop into a bit more of a conversation. Why? I think knitting's really boring. Well, I think it's interesting because you can learn a lot and use colours and make clothes. All right, so cricket, I'm afraid, I know this will be unpopular with many people, but for me, I do find cricket a little bit dull. I think it's because I don't understand the rules. There you go. And again, we can have more of a conversation depending on language level. And remember, this is something your students are doing in pairs. Yeah. And then to continue, the last one, of course, is exciting. I think mountain climbing is exciting. So there is our second activity. And I've taken this again from a textbook just so you can see how this links in. So I've chosen this from grade 7, where they're looking at activities and adjectives. And this is just a different way to do this activity that involves some focused listening, again, listening to instructions and speaking together. So you can also dictate questions, for example, and then students write answers. That's another way to use dictation. Or if there are questions in the textbook you want your students to discuss, ask them to keep the book closed, and instead you dictate the questions and they write the questions first. So they're listening very carefully, writing down the question, then you check they've got the question right, and then they ask and answer the questions in pairs. So you're looking at both skills there as well. You could use that here, for example. So instead of saying go to page 61 and discuss the questions, you'd say books closed, listen, write the questions, and you would read them out, students write them down and then discuss. Okay, time to evaluate now, and I can still see people talking about their views about mountain climbing and cricket, but let's think about this activity as teachers. So writing the answers, this dictation activity, what do you think? Same instructions, yes, no, or not sure. Number 1, what do you think? Is this a good speaking task? Let us know. Number 1, what do you think? I've got lots of yeses. Oh, that's very encouraging. Okay. Number 2, do you think students have to listen carefully here? Number 2, definitely, because again, dictation and very, very focused. Someone saying not sure. They have to listen carefully when they're doing this dictation, otherwise they won't be writing down the right thing. So it's actually a lovely opportunity for some natural communication as well, and for them to use some phrases like, can you repeat, or again, please. Is it adaptable? Number 3, what do you think? Can you adapt it? Could you use it with something else? You could, I think, with anything else, really. I've chosen it here for vocabulary, but you could use this to practice grammar structures as well, anything really. Just look at what's coming up next in your book. I'm sure there's an opportunity for doing this. So have I convinced you? Is anyone going to try it? Anyone saying, yes, I'm going to give this a go? Maybe, and some yeses, why not? No preparation required for this. Just keep your books closed and then read out the questions in the book. All right, so let's move to our next set of activities now. We've looked at dictation and we're now going to move to describing activities. And for this one, I'm going to show you an image and I'm going to describe someone. Listen carefully. Who am I describing? Type the number in the chat and please keep yourself on mute. So listen, who am I describing? Type the number in the chat. Right, this person is not wearing shorts. This person is not wearing shorts. You have to listen carefully. This person is wearing blue. So it's definitely not number 7 because they're wearing shorts. It's definitely not number 8. So this person is not wearing shorts, they're wearing blue, right? It could only be 2 people. This person is wearing a long sleeve top. This person has dark hair. 2 or 4. This person has a moustache. Of course, it can only be 2. Well done. All right, so this is the first part. This is the demonstration. I've demonstrated the activity to my students. So we've done number 1 and we've done number 2. Now it's over to students. So this is where students are getting some control over the activity. So this time they choose something to describe from the picture and they tell their partner. So if this is something in the book, they can look at it, their partner can listen and point. Or if it's on the board, again, they can listen, everybody's looking at the same picture. Okay, so you can see there's a common structure to these activities. First, you're demonstrating with everyone, making sure everyone knows what to do, but then the students do these independently. They do it in pairs or small groups, so they're getting maximum practice. All right, so time to evaluate. Describe the picture. Maybe some of you are already doing this, and let us know in the chat if you've also got another idea at any stage. That would be lovely to see. So what do you think of this one? Is it a good speaking task? Number 1. So busy, the chat today. Thanks, everyone. Okay, we've got lots of yeses there. Do you think students need to listen carefully here? Number 2. They do, don't they? Because again, they have to listen to know which person it is. And because it's a game, they're motivated to listen carefully, aren't they? Do you think you can adapt it? I used a picture of people. Could you use a picture of something else? I think you could. Pictures in the book are good. Pictures related to what they're learning, but make sure they can all see the picture clearly. So anybody going to try this? Or has anyone already tried it before? Number 4. Oh, great. Okay. I want you to come back and tell us how you did after you tried it. Yeah, it is fun. And I think students, they do enjoy this. All right. So you've seen the message. We've got 5 minutes left, but then we're going to restart the meeting after that. So please click to join again when the meeting ends, but we've got time for another describe activity. Are you ready? So you need your pen and paper this time. You can't do this in the chat, I'm afraid. If you don't have it, just draw it in your mind. So I'm going to describe a picture. Listen and draw what I describe. Ready? I'd like you to draw a tree with a big, thick trunk, lots of leaves at the top. There's a creeper or a vine growing up and around the trunk of the tree. And there's a man climbing up the tree. His shoes are at the bottom of the tree. And he has a net. All right, so if I'm doing this in class, I might repeat some bits. And again, I'd encourage my students to ask me to repeat as well. We've got some nice natural communication going on. And then they can look at each other's pictures and see what's similar or different, or they can show me. So I'm going to show you the actual picture now. Here you go. So those of you that did draw, did your picture look anything like this? I wonder. And whether it did or not, or how good the picture is, that doesn't really matter. The focus here is on really listening and understanding some of the key words there. All right, somebody's saying almost. Great. Okay, so let's look at the instructions for this one. Nancy, that's okay if it didn't look much like that. I bet you drew a tree, didn't you? Pooja's creeper was a bit haywire. Okay, instructions for describe and draw coming up. So we've done the first 3 parts. See, each time I'm demonstrating, I described a picture. My students, you today listened, you drew it, and then we compared pictures. So the next stage, students draw something. So you might give them to draw something in particular related to what you've been studying. For example, you know, I describe my house, you draw it, and then I say, I now want you to draw your house. Keep it secret, don't show anyone, and then describe it to your partner listens and draws your house. So again, we've got really detailed, it's like not quite a dictation, but listen and follow the instructions and draw what you hear. So what do you think? Can you think of any other things you could ask your learners to describe? I mean, the thing I chose was from a textbook. It was the beginning of a story. I've also mentioned a house is a good one. Could you think of any other things you could get your learners to describe to each other and draw that could give them some great speaking practice, I wonder? So Kiranpreet is saying their favourite gadget. That's nice and really personalised. Or drawing a rule of the class. That's a nice one, Asma. Why not? Yes, and I like these imaginative ones. A dream destination, a fantasy theme, or some real life, was the other said, a scene, or draw yourself sitting in class. That's nice. Or draw Bruce Lee. Why not? There you go. A garden, your dream garden. That's a lovely one. There you go. So we've got some really motivating and imaginative things for children to draw, but then to talk about and describe to their partner too. Okay. Let's evaluate, describe and draw. Oh, I like that. How would you look after 10 years? Wonderful. Okay, what do you think of this activity? Same questions. Get ready. Number one, describe and draw. Do you think this is a good speaking task where they have to describe a picture? We've got yeses there. Okay, you can see you like that one. Do students have to listen carefully? Number two. Yes, absolutely. They have to listen really carefully so they know what to draw. Number three, could you adapt it? I think we've already answered this one, haven't we? And of course, you need to make sure it's right for your students' level. So don't get them to draw things that they won't be able to describe. But also, it's a good way to challenge them and to help them with extra vocabulary to give a bit more detail, isn't it? All right, number one, is anyone going to try it, or have you tried it? Our next set of activities are about imagination. Our first one is telling a story from a picture. And I'm just going to explain the instructions. If you want to write your story, you can do, but just this one I'm going to explain. So you choose a picture. This one is from a course book, and you ask your students to look carefully at it. So if it's a story from the book, get them to cover up the text so they're just looking at the image, and they need to think about who is in the picture, where are they, what are they doing, and why are they there. So your students in groups will then tell their own story about the picture, and there's no right or wrong answers here, right? And the more imaginative and creative they are, the better. I can guarantee you the stories will all be different. Once your students have told their story to each other and made up their story, then they turn around and tell the students behind them their story, listen to those students' stories and see if they're similar or different. You could do that more than once. Maybe they could then turn to the left and speak to the pair or the group who were sitting on their left, or turn to the right and see what their story is. You can develop this in lots of ways as well. You could give them some keywords that they should include in their story, perhaps. You might get them to role play the story or role play that situation as well, which would give them some more lovely speaking. I wonder if anyone has put a story in the chat. Yes, we have. Dr. Rashi has. Yes. Some of you, maybe you know the story because it's from It So Happened. Some of you might be using this in class. So there you go. And I chose this because it's from a textbook, and I would use this before doing the reading activity, because then you can read the story and get students to listen perhaps and compare their story to the real one. So what do you think about this activity? Have you done this before? That's good too. Let me know in the chat, but here are our questions. So do you think it's a good speaking task, talking about a picture? And so again, people putting their suggestions of what the story is. Gets the imagination going, doesn't it? Do you think it involves listening carefully? So if you do the second part where they tell their story to another group and they have to listen and notice similarities and differences, you need to set that listening task, then yes. So if you include that part, it does. Do you think you can adapt it? You could use any picture. You could, yeah. And it does, Nancy said it's more about observing. It is about observing, isn't it? And then about saying your observations and putting those into words and making a story. Niraj, 1, 2, 3, 4, yes. Okay, that's great. And again, if you're going to try it, let me know. Okay, our next Imagine activity is what happens next. So here's the beginning of the story. I'm going to read it as well from one of your books. Listen. Shetty the magician was returning home when all of a sudden it began to rain. It rained heavily. Shetty looked around for shelter and saw a pretty little fir tree. He ran towards it as fast as he could. Soon the rain stopped. Shetty was happy that he did not get wet. Thank you, you've been kind to me. I'd like to reward you. Ask for 4 wishes and I will grant them, said the magician. My question for you, what do you think the little fir tree wished for? Let us know. So your ideas in the chat for this one. So what happens next? So I've told the beginning of the story, and then it's for students to imagine what happens next. Now I'm asking you to do this individually, but in class I would do this in pairs. So as you're putting your ideas there, let's go to the instructions. So I've done the first bit. You've listened to the beginning, and then with your partner, we're doing this in pairs. You're imagining what happens next. This is a speaking activity. And then I'm going to join the pairs and make groups of 4 again, just by turning round or turning to your left or right. And students compare their ideas. Do they have the same ideas or not? More speaking. And then finally, they can read the story, or you could read it aloud, and they compare their ideas and see if they were right. And I think I'm going to let you find out for yourselves by looking in the book. But you've got some lovely, lovely ideas, and I think children would also come up with some really imaginative ones. There you go. And as I'm taking these examples from textbooks, I'm just saying these are different ways of doing what is already there in your curriculum, so that you've already got this in your textbook. You've got the beginning of the story. You could stop it at a point and get the students to talk about what they think happens next. And then afterwards, do the usual activities. So here there are reading comprehension activities, which I would do after we've done these activities. Thank you. Time to evaluate. So what happens next? Is it a good speaking task, do you think? Number 1, what do you think? Yes, no, not sure. Absolutely. Very imaginative, guessing what happens next. I think the thing to manage here is that they tell their partner instead of shouting it out in front of the class. Do you think students have to listen carefully here? They do if they're listening to you reading the story, and also for part 2, when they have to listen and tell their story and listen to their partners or the other group's ideas, they have to listen carefully, don't they? Can you adapt it? Number 3. You can use this with any story. You just need to choose the right moment to stop, I think. And is anyone going to try this in your next reading lesson, maybe? Or listening? Use this with listening too. Why not? Okay, the last 2 activities. So you can see I've been grouping them, and the last two are about memory. So look very carefully because I'm going to show you an image. Are you ready? I'm going to show you an image. Look very carefully. You won't see it for very long. Okay, coming up now, look carefully. Because in a minute, I will ask you some questions about this image. So try to remember it. No screenshots. And the image will disappear in 3, 2, 1. Right. So I would like you to write down 3 things from the image that the children were eating. 2 things that you saw on the walls. And there were tablecloths that had different colours. I'd like you to write down 1 colour of a tablecloth. There we go. Really nice. That was your writing. And I can see you've got great memories. There you go. You can see important here. I'm asking you to do this alone, but in class, this is a speaking activity and they're doing it in pairs. So they're remembering together. They can still write it down, but they have to talk to each other. They were eating cakes. No, I think sausages. No, it was something else. So lots of real communication going on. All right, and I'll show you the picture if you want to. Again, you can check your own answers. I'm not going to check them now. Now, this picture I took from, it's from Cambridge Assessment resources for the A1 starters exam, and you can get this for free on the internet, and that's good because it's A1 level vocabulary. So there are lots of beautiful pictures like this in this booklet that show the vocabulary that children are learning at A1, at real beginner level. But you don't need to use that because you've already got pictures in your book, haven't you? Here's one from Raindrops, grade 2. So let's imagine you use the same memory game with this. How does it work? Well, you say the children go to page 43, look at the picture, give them, 10, 15 seconds. Then, okay, children, close your books. And then what are you going to ask them to remember? So what questions would you ask them? So this time I'm interested in the questions. So you're teachers now. So as a teacher, what questions would you ask them to focus their memory? There we go. Thank you, Manuka. How many lamps were there? Right. Nancy, what was the colour of the lady's sari? Good. Pooja, which festival is celebrated? Lovely. How many diyas? Says Kumar. Lovely. Which crackers are being burst? That's it. You've got the idea. So again, we're using what you're already using in class. We're using the textbook. You can use your image. And again, maybe this is the beginning of the unit. Maybe it's before a reading or a listening. And it's a way to engage children, get them speaking and get them listening to each other as well. So, oh yes, please. Okay, yes. And I've got some example here, but I think 2 of yours were the same as mine, but you've got so many more imaginative questions too. Let's evaluate it. And I've written here picture or video because you could also use this if you played a short video clip, or you could use a still from a video instead of another image that you found, or instead of the course book. So what do you think? There were really so many responses to that one. It's a good speaking task. I think so, because you would be trying to remember together, wouldn't you? And probably arguing and disagreeing about what colour things were. Do students have to listen carefully? They should listen to each other, shouldn't they? Because remember, this is a pair work task. Yeah. Can you adapt it? Yes, you can. Any picture. And who's going to try it? Any brave yeses? Why not? You don't need to prepare. Just plan it into your next lesson. 2 minutes, get your students talking. Great. Okay, last activity. This one, again, I'm just going to describe. And this one is retelling the story. So again, I've taken a story from textbook. This one's from grade 7 Honeycomb. And I'm just going to focus on the pictures. I might even give them the title. And first of all, I'm going to combine it with my other activity and story from a picture, and I'm going to get students to guess the story together. So they're starting speaking straight away. So if they're in the text with their book, they've covered the text, they're talking to each other. Oh, I think it's about a dream, and he dreamed about a dog, and maybe it's the little fir tree, I don't know. Then, that was number one, you tell the story. So you don't get them to read it, but you can read it aloud. They listen and decide if their story was right or not. And then, having listened carefully to the real story that you told them, it's not better, but the story that's in the book, they try and remember that and then tell it to their partner in pairs. So they're listening to your story and then trying to remember and tell their partner. And again, they use the pictures to help them to retell that story. So lots of skills involved here. Predicting vocabulary. You might use it to pre-teach some key vocabulary. We are listening and comparing to your ideas, and then telling a story again from what you've heard. So telling a story, what can you remember from memory? So that's an imaginary dream. There you go. So that's the last one. What do you think about this one? I know we've done that one very quickly. Is it good speaking task? Will that get your students speaking, do you think, retelling a story? And it could also be a story they read or they did yesterday or last week. Is just to try and remember and retell the story. And again, you can use pictures to prompt that. Do they have to listen? They do. They have to listen very carefully to you. It can be used with different pictures, different stories, any listening, any reading. And I wonder if anyone will try it. Okay, so we are running a little bit late today. Apologies for that, because we had a few problems, but we have got almost to the end now. And it's time now to reflect on what we've covered today. So at the beginning of the session, we talked about creating a safe speaking environment. I wonder if you can remember the 3 key points from the research I mentioned at the beginning. What were the 3 key things they said are important for creating that safe speaking environment? Wazila is there straight away, and Pooja, very quick. Wow. Excellent, Shahista as well. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I think you've remembered them really well. So let's review. So choosing the right tasks, and that's what we've been focusing on today. Secondly, encouraging positive peer interaction. Remember that safe, non-judgmental environment. And the last one, giving feedback to celebrate communicative success and moving students forward. Now I can see lots of things in the chat, lots of adjectives that we mentioned as well. Well done, that's coming up next. So remember again to the beginning, what should our speaking and listening tasks be? They should have the right level of what? Somebody said this right at the beginning. So have a look at these on the screen. Can you guess any of the missing words? It should be
challenge.
Somebody said it there. Okay. You should give students something to listen. And these are related to what I've been doing. So you should do something first before allowing students to listen. So it's difficult for me to hear everyone, but do type your ideas in the chat.
Demonstrate.
All right, answers coming up now. I think everybody got this one, the right level. I was muted there too. Number 2, it needs to be relevant to your students. And this one, number 3, I wonder if you got this one. Yes, Dr. Rashi has this one. Students need to have a reason to listen. We can't expect students just to want to listen. So you'll notice that with all of these activities, it's part of the task. They have to listen well in order to do the next bit, to do the fun bit. And yes, we need to demonstrate first, and then we give that student agency. Remember, we let them lead the activity. So we start off with the whole class, we do the demonstration, but that's just the beginning. Then the real speaking happens. Then they're in pairs or small groups. They understood it because they did it with you, but then they're speaking independently together. And finally, this last one, I think many people said chance, and I agree with you. Give lots of chances, lots of opportunities, yes, and give them some choices too. And you'll remember we talked about these 5 different kinds of immersive tasks, and you'll be able to identify some of them that fit with the activities we did today. Now you'll remember the one I did on describing people, and I'd like to share with you where you can find this and a lot more activities that you might want to find, that you might want to do with your students. So this is a fantastic resource. It's called Learn English with Friends, and it's a series of short animations that were made especially for India and especially for beginner level, and they look at different topics. And in each video, you will find 3 fun and engaging activities to get learners really listening and really speaking. And I took some of the activities today from that, like the describe the picture one. So I'll be sharing a link to that at the very end. And somebody saying you downloaded it last week. Yes, so maybe some of you have heard about this through the newsletter. So I really recommend that for more activities. And also at the end, after our questions, we'll be sharing with you a PDF that's got all the instructions for the activities we did today, and also references from today's session as well. So you can take a screenshot of this if you like, but don't worry, we'll be sharing a PDF once we've done the questions. All right. Well done, everyone. Everyone who made it back for the second time. And I think now it's time for some questions.
Thank you so much, Claire. I think it was really a fantastic presentation, and you could see, the kind of feedback our audience is, posting in the chat box. So thank you so much, for such an engaging, interactive session, on a critical aspect of language learning, that is how to engage students in listening and speaking tasks. And I'm sure the audience must have got some really innovative ideas, to try these activities or adapt them, in their own classroom context. And last but not the least, thank you so much, to our wonderful audience, for being so patient. I know, we have been facing a technical glitch today, and just happened 2-3 times that we had to move out of the session. But thank you so much, for your patience. And you were really active, and, responses were pouring in, throughout the session. So thank you so much. Now it's time for the Q&A session. So before that, there is a quick announcement. We will be sharing the feedback link shortly, in the chat box, and you can click that link and fill in the form to get your certificate. Okay, so some questions for you, Claire.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a question, from Michelle. Sorry, just one second. Yeah, there is a question from our audience, Ashwini, she's asking, is there any speaking levels to be mentioned for students who study English as a second language?
I wonder what we mean by that question. So different levels of speaking. I mean, certainly we can talk about speaking at all levels, and it's something we should be aiming to develop right from day one, I think. If you've heard of the CEFR, for example, the European Framework of Reference for Languages, which has levels from A1 going up to C2 for levels of proficiency in languages. And you can actually find in there descriptors and can-do statements for all levels. So I think that's a really interesting place to go to look at how we describe those speaking skills at different levels and how they become more advanced as learners learn more. And those descriptors, I should say as well, they're not just for speaking, are they, Vanita? They're for all the language skills as well. So it's actually quite an interesting resource to look at. And I think you probably have this in your curriculum as well, in the different levels that you're teaching, different grades, what students are expected to do at each level. So I think that would be an interesting place. Maybe even in your course books too, you might have can-do statements. So I'd say look in there too. I hope I've answered that question. I hope that was what you wanted, Ashwini.
Thank you so much, Claire. There's another interesting question from Sharbani Ghosh. What kind of activities a teacher can perform for the students with disabilities in the case of speaking and listening?
Then I hate saying it depends, so I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say you need to select that activity carefully so that you can include all of your students and make the adjustments that you need to make for the students in your class who have disabilities that will help them to participate, whatever that is. So when we're talking about teaching students with special educational needs and disabilities, we often use the term reasonable adjustments, and that's what I think you should do. So have your idea in mind. It's a great activity. My students are going to enjoy this. Now, who do I need to think carefully about, and what do I need to do to make sure those students are involved? And there are some really simple things that are going to help everyone. One is giving really clear instructions and demonstrations of the activity. That will help all of your learners, not just the ones with special educational needs. You might use pictures to support your instructions as well, for example. So I would say just think carefully about what those needs are and what adjustments do you need to make. It's often the case of that. You don't need to throw away a great idea, you just need to make some tweaks.
Thank you so much, Claire, for these these tips, wonderful tips. There's another question from Sadhana.
So many questions. I'll be quick.
How should we handle students who mock their peers for their mistakes in spite of strict rules?
Yeah,
should we give them some consequences?
Oh, do you know, I think this breaks my heart when it happens, doesn't it? And I think it's part of our responsibility as a teacher to create an environment where students understand that mistakes are part of learning and that they are opportunities to learn. They are not a sign of failure. And I think the most powerful way we can do that is by our own response to students' errors, and by also noticing and celebrating success and progress, not just pointing out the errors all the time, because everything we do as students, as teachers, everything we do impacts on our learners as well. So I'd say number one is leading by example of our own responses, as well as if learners are mocking or making fun or having unhelpful responses, is to give them an alternative way to behave and to respond to their students as well. So to notice that behavior and to help those students to change how they respond.
Thank you, Claire. Another question from Ritika. How to inculcate these tasks with students who are weaker in English and are studying in the same class with the higher level English adaptability?
Yeah, I think a lot of these tasks are quite open-ended and students will do what they can, which is the beauty of it, isn't it? That students are working together to do a speaking task. They're either using their imaginations or they're solving a problem, and everyone will give what they can. So I think they work really well with mixed abilities. And what I said earlier about including all learners, that goes with students who have more or less of a linguistic resource as well. I think that advice goes for those as well. I would say think about your groupings and experiment and see what works, and who works well together. There's lots of ways to pair students up with students with a similar level, students who are stronger and not as strong in speaking. That can work very well as well, depending on the relationship between the students, and students can certainly learn a lot from each other. So I would say experiment and make sure the students who aren't as strong understand what they have to do, and certainly they can contribute in all of these in their own way.
Thank you so much, Claire. There's just the last one from Sukanya. Some students have a better level of fluency and they're more articulate, but some students, they lack the confidence. So in a classroom, we usually, find these mixed bag of students with difference in the level of understanding. So still, how can we engage them in a collaborative activity?
Okay, that was quite a long question, but I think again, we're talking about mixed levels, aren't we there? I think the key here is in the task, is going right back to the beginning about what gets students speaking. It's that they're immersed in the task. So we need to get those tasks right. We need to choose things that students are going to enjoy and want to be involved in. And like I say, in this way, everyone will give what they can in terms of their speaking, and everyone will benefit. We can support, we can do some reviews of vocabulary. You can give students some useful language, some useful phrases to get them started on an activity. If you know there's something they'll need, we talked about, a good speaking activity needs to be predictable. So look at what you're going to ask them to do and think about what language do they need. Maybe just a reminder of, and maybe put some words or phrases on the board, and that's going to help your students, and then practice saying them as well, so they're getting their mouths around the words and phrases they'll need in the activity. And I think that will help. It helps everyone, honestly, but it will help the ones who need it, and that's important.
Thank you so much, Claire, once again, for all your wonderful suggestions and tips.